Well, welcome to this session on peer-to-peer apartment reservation websites. The first thing I'd like to do before we get underway here is just to ask the audience here, how many people are staying here in Berlin in an apartment that you reserved, maybe on one of their sites or Airbnb? Anybody, could they raise their hand if you're staying in a site? Okay, okay. Yeah, a little bit later on, I'll be asking you about brand awareness of the various brands that are represented here. Basically, we have two types of participants here besides myself. We have representatives of peer-to-peer apartment rental platforms, 3, which I'll introduce here quickly, basically with the PowerPoints. And then we have 2 representatives of the hotel industry, one from Switzerland and one from Spain. So let me just, okay, oops. Yeah, so that's the lineup. And now I'll just quickly introduce, I'll let you just read the slides so that tells you. To my immediate left is Ramón Bach. So he is CEO now of 9 Flats. To his left is Arnaud Bertrand. Oh, no, sorry, it's, I guess I skipped one here. Wait, yeah, there. Arnaud Bertrand, who actually is a former student of mine. He only graduated from the École Hotelière in 2009, and he founded the company, well, he launched it in 2010, is that correct? Yeah. Okay, so he's the CEO, and his wife is the finance director of HouseTrip, which has become a major factor in this sector in the European market. Now, to his left is Christopher Oster, one of the founders of Wimdu, which is a German-based website. And to his left is hotelleriesuisse. So this is Thomas Allemann, and this is the trade association for Switzerland, for Swiss hotels. And to his left is Ramón Estalella from Spain, representing the Spanish Hotelier Association. Okay, now I plan to cover basically 3 themes here. The first one, I'm going to talk a little bit about quality control, because we all know if we go on one of these sites, maybe some people would have a question as to the consistency of the type of accommodation they're actually going to get. Then we're going to look at the aspect of destination impact. How much is the hotel sector actually being affected? Are these websites, or let's say this type of activity, bringing incremental business to the destinations? And then we're also going to explore a bit the regulatory aspect. Now, I'll just throw out a figure here, actually, that Arnaud Bertrand just gave me. This is estimated to be now, according to Focusrite, correct? Focusrite, this is a $60 billion industry in terms of revenue, Umsatz, turnover. So it's getting to be a big business. I think the main thing is it's a very fast-growing business, and I think we'll have occasion to hear about that. Okay, now I'd like to kick off with Ramón, if you would just basically describe the business model of 9 Flats. How many people are aware of 9 Flats, let's say before this? Okay. Good.
More than 9, that's good.
Good, excellent. How are you different from an OTA? And also I'm interested to hear, what about sites, companies like HomeAway, which have many different apartment rental or holiday rentals, and also Wyndham Worldwide. I don't know if people in the room are familiar with them, but they are probably the biggest factor in holiday rentals. They have a very big operation here in Europe with many, many different brands. It's actually an American company. So, Ramón, if you could just tell us a bit.
Yeah. So, to make it very simple, we didn't invent hospitality. We didn't invent private housing or peer-to-peer rental. What we're doing is just like what all our companies are doing, actually. It's more like an eBay, which brings renters and homeowners together. So, of course, there has been holiday lettings for ages. What we are doing is just like modernize it, make it transparent, and connect the buyer with the traveler. So the traveler with the host. So it's really only an internet eBay thing for homes. To get a small glimpse of what this business means is we have now 9 flats as not the biggest player in the room, has more beds than the Hilton Group worldwide. And we started in 2011 with only 15,000 places, and now it's a lot more. Okay. Well, and to get the economic scale, in January, we made more turnovers in travels than in 2011 combined. So it's really fast growing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Could you give us a figure for revenue? Or?
We are now profitable, which we were not in 2013.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good. Now, what about the competitive aspect with HomeAway or Wimdu? Do you consider them as direct competitors, or are they really in a different business?
I think HomeAway will certainly change its business model, because a lot of homeowners see that they have an alternative to paying the listing fee. So they will be working on this. I'm quite convinced that they're working hectically on it. Mm-hmm. But I don't see them like a threat to our business, because this is a young industry, and we sit here like more like united, jointly developing this market, which is indeed huge, and which is more like a problem for the hotel industry. I don't see it as a problem for the for companies like HomeAway.
Okay, very good. Now I just want to mention before I go any further. I'm going to open this up to questions in just about a little over 35 minutes, so you should be thinking about questions that you would want to ask as we go along here. After all, this is peer-to-peer, the subject of this discussion. Arnaud, I would like to ask you about brand consistency. How do you ensure consistency of product and service that you offer to your clients? In other words, this seems to be one of the biggest challenges. I'll just mention one thing. Airbnb, who refused to come to this panel, as they did in the International Hotel Investment Forum. However, what they have done, they have hired one of the top boutique hoteliers in the United States, Chip Conley, who founded the Joie de Vivre chain back in the 80s, to be the chief of operations. So that's there. Now, of course, with Arnaud, it's a bit different. He comes out of the hotel industry, so he didn't have to hire Chip Conley. Anyway, so Arnaud, how do you answer this question about?
So first, I'm going to come back to your first question on the difference with hotel OTAs. I think a major difference is that while hotel OTAs brands needs to stand for a great reservation experience, in our industry, we don't only need to do that, but we also need to vouch for the stay, because on hotel OTA you will book brands you're familiar with, like Hilton, Intercontinental, and so on and so forth. On HouseTrip you book accommodation you have no idea for, on your whole platforms like us accountable for the quality of the stay. So I always say that we're only as good as our host on the quality of the properties listed on HouseTrip. So we do a lot of work to ensure that not only the reservation experience, but the stay experience is also great for the guests. I'm not going to go through all the measures that we take. I'm simply going to give you a metric which is very important for us. It's our guest satisfaction scores. So we survey all our guests after their stay, asking them how likely they would be to recommend a house trip to a friend. 97% of them respond very likely, meaning that they find that our measures for quality of the stay are effective. Otherwise, they wouldn't like the experience that much. And by the way, that's one of the highest scores of the accommodation sector as a whole. It's if you take similar metric for hotel groups, it's much lower. So people really enjoy their experience.
Yeah, I think you quoted a figure in the IHIF of the percentage of customers that complained. Can you remember what that figure was?
So it was in reference to a policy that we have, which is when you check in on a HouseTrip and if you have any issue with the property, you can call us and we'll relocate you immediately for free. And less than 0.1% of people call us.
0.1%.
Yeah.
Okay, well that seems like a pretty good quality assurance. Christopher, so I'd like to ask you the same two questions basically. For instance, do you feel that you're in competition with HomeAway or Wyndham in any way, or is this really something a bit in another sector?
So I would start by briefly commenting on the business model, as we mentioned that in the first place. And actually, the business model is very similar to OTAs, but the big difference, the booking methodology is very similar than it is in OTAs. But the big difference is that we are addressing a completely different customer segment. So the people that travel with Wimdu or with HouseTrip or 9 Flats, they usually want to experience a city in a completely different way than a normal hotel customer. So it's people that really want to understand the city, and they don't want a normal sightseeing, they want more than that. And this is what you only get in the local neighborhoods, and that's actually the product we are offering on our website. And I think that's the first and the biggest difference between the classic OTAs and the market and us at the moment. And you also see that in the booking figures. So we usually have people that stay longer as they dive deeper into the cities. And we also have larger groups coming in. So it's families usually that book on Wimdu, as it's simply more convenient for them to stay in an apartment and have everyone together than in a hotel room. So I think that's the biggest difference on the business model. And in terms of quality standards, I think all websites are doing really a lot in order to ensure that the quality standard for the guest is high. So us, for example, we are in contact with all the owners on our website. We also send photographers to the places and take pictures of the apartments where we can. We have international customer support. We ask the guest, of course, to leave reviews so that we have true and genuine statements about the places. And in case something is really not as it is advertised online, it's also taken out immediately.
Okay, good. I would just like to quickly review something with the three platforms. How much do you charge homeowners or apartment owners, and how much do you charge guests? So, Ramón?
So one of the specialties of 9 Flats is that we're super consumer-centric, so we don't charge the guest ever. And the homeowner pays a fee from 6 to up to 15% of the trip price. So we feel the seller should pay the party. Yeah.
Well, what determines whether it's high or low in that range that you've cited? In other words, what determines whether it's more like 6 or 7% or 15%?
Borrowing Excel.
What?
So it's depending on the quality score of the object and the booking size.
Okay. Okay.
So we take a 15% commission on hosts.
Okay. On hosts only, yeah.
Yeah.
And same with us, also 15%.
Okay. 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 All right. I think it's time to give the hoteliers a chance to participate. So, Thomas and Raymond, I'd like to ask you a question now about the impact of the peer-to-peer rental websites in your respective country markets. In other words, which segments or locations are feeling the impact the most? In other words, in terms of travel purpose, in terms of geographical location? Thomas,
yes.
What do you...
I would say we have to distinguish between the holiday apartments and rooms or beds that are sold. In Switzerland, we have a very long tradition in holiday apartments that are commercialized. When you saw before the figure that 80% of all overnight stays in Switzerland are realized in our member hotels, which is 80% out of 35 million overnight stays in Switzerland. This is only half. Other 35 millions, we do not know exactly because the statistical about the holiday rentals has been abolished 5 years ago, but then we had 50%, also 35 million overnight stays in holiday flats or houses. So until now we could live very good with this because they were official, there were regulations, there are regulations, they were also integrated in the marketing of the destinations. They paid their city taxes, they paid also marketing fees for the promotion of tourism. What is new now, and also with these platforms, especially Airbnb in Switzerland, is that we have more offers also in cities. Before it was mainly reserved to destinations, and now we have especially apartments and rooms and beds which are offered also in the cities. And there is a regulation, but nobody controls it. And these are mainly private or commercial offers which are in a grease zone, I would say, not in a black zone, so they do not pay any fees. And this is the main problem where we say we have a competition with the classical hotellerie, and we can live with it. We always have to learn from new offers, especially from the share economy, but when there are apartments sold over these platforms without that they have the same rules and regulations.
Okay, we'll get into that discussion in a minute, but which class of hotels now, Thomas is responsible for hotel grading in Switzerland, as I understand, so which grade of hotels is being particularly impacted, and what, let's say, customer segments is being impacted by the peer-to-peer?
You know, I couldn't say it's just the 3-star hotels or the 5-star hotels, as there are offers from very cheap prices up to high-end prices. I can give you some figures from Zurich because there was a study from Colin Partner. They have 1.2% of all overnight stays in Zurich which are realized over Airbnb, so it's still a little. But we have the concerns knowing that how fast they will grow in the future. But it will concern every category. Okay.
Ramón, the same question. Which areas, in terms of geographical, which types of accommodation hotels are being affected by this phenomenon?
I think they are affecting all kind of hotels. You know, we can think in the medium class hotels they are more affected by, because this is the price is more, you know, the way to compete. But let me explain what we think now about all this P2P, because the private people renting the properties they've been doing for centuries. No? The fact is that when all these platforms on internet started, and the first ones that were completely free, like Couchsurfers, that is for free, you can exchange houses, you know. Everybody was happy, consumers are happy. But now what we are seeing, now we're speaking about commissions, about turnover, revenues and everything, this is real an economical activity. This is a business. And this is a huge business. So as I don't see many difference between these platforms and a normal travel agent, online travel agency. It's a travel agency who sells private accommodation. Like there is some specialized travel agencies selling castles or selling trips or selling services, so it's a travel agency. And in the other side, the people who supply the services, these private people, it's like hoteliers. They sell the product and they sell the product for a price. The problem is that now all these P2P platforms, now with the internet, they are now multiplying by 1,000 times to let the chance that the people can get guarantees, they can get information, they can get everything. And at the same time, the private people, they can show their product to everybody. So at the end, this is an economical activity, and why they are more cheaper, why they are cheaper than the normal hoteliers. Because we not only represent hoteliers, we represent hoteliers, the apartment, legal apartments, bungalows, campings, you know, balnearios, all kind of accommodation. And I think this is one type of accommodation, private accommodation. The fact is that they are competing, you know, without any kind of regulation like they are doing in the rest of the tourist sector.
Okay, as I said, we'll get into the regulatory aspect.
So speaking about in which areas, the tourist areas, because we had a lot of apartments owned by private people in our country, tourists, and mainly some of the big cities. The ones who get a better connectivity by plane, because they can get now with the low-cost carriers, they can get a very cheap tickets of Barcelona or Madrid or Malaga. They are doing much better than other kind of cities. Okay,
now I would like to ask another question to the hoteliers. So what has been the reaction to your hotelier members, the members of your associations? What kind of feedback have you gotten about these peer-to-peer websites?
We had the first feedback we had was last September from the hoteliers from Zurich. They realized what is growing here on this market. Actually, I just checked for this week. We have 450 apartments or rooms which are offered on Airbnb, and they said we have to do something in order to know if there are regulations, and if there are regulations, that they are also controlled and kept. And from the hotelier's point of view, it's primarily the marketing fee, the city tax, which they have to pay for every overnight stay, which is used for infrastructure and for marketing. And they say, we want that we have the same weapons as they have.
Right. And Ramón?
The Spanish hoteliers, now we understand we cannot stop this tendency because it's a market tendency. So what we're asking is we need to have a regulation because it's one type of accommodation. No? Like we have a lot of regulation in the rest of the types. We want some regulation. We are against the black economy. Now the tax department in our country says the largest black economy comes in the tourist sector, because we can see there is 200,000 apartments, and it's increasing day by day, people who want to rent the houses. So, and we are pro, the rights of the consumer, so we are asking for some kind of regulation. So, I'm not speaking what kind, but some kind of regulation, who is going to affect not only the people who rent the houses, but also to the platforms. Because they are a travel agent, and there is a package travel directive, for example, and you are selling.
Now just, Ramón, if I could just interrupt you for a minute. Which part of Spain, let's say, are the hoteliers the most upset, or have you had the most complaints, let's say, about these rental websites?
Now all over. I will say all over. There is problems in Mallorca, there's problems in the Canary Islands, there is problems in Barcelona and in Madrid, because they are seeing the dropping of the sales and the revenues of the price. We've seen this year, for example, we've been very successful in our country, the second largest, the record in number of tourism. But then the hoteliers, we see a drop of a 1.4% in room nights, and there was an increase like a 600% in private accommodation. So at the end, hoteliers, they are seeing that we have more people, but less room nights per day and less price.
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask a question to all of you, one after the other. So I'm going to start with Ramón here. Do you believe that short-term rental websites bring incremental revenue to the tourist destination? Now, just throw out a figure here. Of course, this comes from Mr. Chesky, who is a founder of Airbnb. He claims that in New York, the Airbnb brings $630 million of revenue to the destination, incremental revenue. In other words, incremental revenue that is being brought in by Airbnb that is not displacing hotel revenue. Now, what do you think about this question?
I cannot comment on the number for New York.
No, but
there are several studies for other markets as well. It's a basic thing. It's not only that you pay less for your accommodation, so you have more to spend, but it's also that people who were not able to travel before, just like imagine couples with small children, they need to have like a water cooker in the apartment and everything. They wouldn't do city trips otherwise. So yes, we are bringing additional tourists who were not able to do these city trips before, because we have the right accommodations, and yes, they save, so they have more money to spend on their budget, because their budget is like a fixed thing, always. Whatever they save on the hotel or the flight, they can spend.
Yeah, I'll just interject here, and then I'll let Arnaud answer the question. There's another site that's based in London, which is a luxury site called One Fine Stay, all in one word. And I had a discussion with the owner last June, the owner-founder, and he claimed even in the luxury space that his site was bringing essentially incremental guests, incremental tourists to the destination, to London and Manhattan. These are the two areas where he operates primarily. In other words, an extended family that can stay in a £2 million lodging in London. Okay, now what do you think about this, Arnaud, this question about incremental revenue?
Whether it's growing the market, I think it's a yes. I think at the end of the day, the popularity of our platform indicates three consumer trends. The first one is value. I mean, that's no big news there, but people want value. When you know, on HouseTrip, for instance, the average price of a 2-bedroom apartment in Paris that was booked last year is €120 a night, and that's for the whole apartment. So you get good value. Secondly, it's authenticity, so people like very authentic experiences. And the last one, which in my mind is the most interesting one, people want freedom when they travel. They want to be able to travel on their own terms. Like, I mean, I'm staying in a HouseTrip apartment right here in Berlin. I love the fact that this morning I was able to have my coffee the way I like it, done by me in my pajamas. That's, you know, I want to bring my routine with me on holiday. I don't want to go back home after my holiday and tell myself, finally I can behave the way I want and be myself. And I think that's a very powerful trend. So to come back to your question, I think that everyone who is motivated to travel by those things, you know, might not be traveling today in other types of accommodation because they don't have freedom, they don't have the value that they see, and we're fulfilling those needs and therefore growing the market.
Now, let me just stop you there, because I think you mentioned an interesting thing in the IHIF. Didn't you say that a high proportion of your clients actually are families?
Yeah,
60%. So 60% of HouseTrip clients are families.
Yeah.
And another difference I think we could mention here, correct me if I'm wrong, Arnaud, HouseTrip rents only whole apartments.
So we also have a few rooms, but 94% or so of our properties are entire properties. So that's
whereas Airbnb is more oriented to renting this, say, just a room in an apartment.
Yeah, our core focus is entire properties. Yeah.
Anything else about this?
No, that was my...
Christopher, what do you say about this incremental? Are sites like yours bringing incremental guests to the destination, incremental revenues, do you think?
So we've actually asked our guests if they would have done the trip also, if it wasn't for private accommodations, and around 40% said that they would not have done the trip if it wasn't for us. And main reasons are convenience, price, and being local. Being local, Arnaud already said. Price is clear. If you have a family of 5, they would need 3 hotel rooms in London, and no one can pay that. So they just take one apartment. And convenience, also, I think you mentioned that they have a kitchen and all the nice amenities of an apartment. So for that, we have a clear indication that it's incremental revenue. But what I think is at least as important as that is that the revenue that we bring in is actually being spent in the local neighborhoods. So instead of like going to being bussed somewhere, it's completely in the local shops, in the local restaurant, in the small boutiques that are somewhere, not in the downtown center where we have high traffic anyways, but it's also in the smaller areas of the town where our apartments are located. And that's good for the local infrastructure also. So it's not about only being incremental, but also about where the money is actually spent.
Okay, I think that's an extremely interesting figure that Christopher has thrown out. So 40% of your guests would not have made the trip if they could not stay in an apartment rental.
Yes.
Interesting. Now, what do you think about this, hoteliers? Thomas, do you accept that these websites, apartment rental websites, are bringing incremental guests to their destinations? What do you think about that?
Yes and no. As we heard now, 40% wouldn't have come, so it's a yes, but the other 60% is a no. And there is incremental revenue, but the question is, what is the incremental cost? More guests mean also more costs for the cities in relation to infrastructure.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. Could you be precise about these costs? You give us some examples.
Can I be?
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
Oh, okay, so it's costs in infrastructure. You have to clean the roads and so on. And 1/3, I would say 1/3 of this revenue is black economy, as Ramón told. So it's not really economical, touchable. And going back to the costs, what happens if it's more economical, more interesting for you to sell a flat on this platform instead of renting it to a resident? Flats become more expensive, and you have a lack of flats for residents in these cities in this future when the trend is going on as we suggest to suppose that it will boost in the next years.
Sorry, I have to.
Go ahead, please.
I have to, no, sorry, I have to get right into this, because I mean this is obviously what we three are doing is harming the hotel industry because they can't do yield management anymore. Yeah, because nobody will pay ridiculous trade fair prices anymore because they can get an apartment. I paid 70 euro for a 100 square meter apartment now. And it's not as good as the hotel room, but the hotel room is slightly more expensive. But what I really don't like is all these nightmares about sharing is destroying the housing market. I mean, we all together have approximately 5,500 apartments in Berlin for offer now, today. Since 10 years, the city of Berlin has done nothing in housing policies. We are short 40,000 apartments at least. By end of 2015, we are short 100,000 apartments in Berlin only. So the politicians didn't do their job for 10 years. These 5,000 apartments, if we forbid all of them, which some people might like, approximately 500 would go back to the market because this is like apartments from, for example, a friend of mine. He lives in Hamburg. He used to live in Berlin. He still keeps his apartment in Berlin because sometimes he comes over a long weekend. Now he can monetize the time when he's not here, which is good for him because it helps him to make his living. Will he give this apartment back to the market? No, never. Will he rent it long term? No, because he wants to have it as his holiday apartment. It's a luxury for him. Yeah? We ease the pain of having this luxury, but it's not an apartment for the market. So let's just imagine, why not? 2,000 apartments go to the market in Berlin. Will I get a cheap flat?
I do not agree.
Okay, go ahead. Thomas, you have the floor.
We are short in Berlin. Do you solve this problem by selling these apartments on the B2C market? No. So
no, but
probably
it's not
it will be
adding,
more shortage than before.
But we are not responsible for the rental or housing crisis in Zurich or Berlin just by adding like a few hundred apartments for rent.
I only said this could be one of the costs.
Yeah, and I tell you,
not that it's your fault. Huh?
Okay, let's hear from Ramón.
I have a different opinion of what you are saying because I think we go deep in the apartment selling or not and increases. I think the question was if we think that there's going to be an increase of travelers to a destination.
The incremental.
Incremental. But what do we want? Travelers or money? This is the question. Because what's tourists for? What we are in our country, what we are experimenting is two different things. There are some places that are an incremental of tourists, of course. In some of the places in the cities, they are moving from the hotel business to the apartments. So the people going from one place to the other. And
could you give us some examples of destinations that fall into one or other categories?
No, for example, I can tell you in Madrid now, Madrid is dropping like a 15% in the number of room nights, and apartments are growing and growing and growing.
Hotel room nights.
Hotel room nights, and then the private apartments are growing. And it's less people coming to the airport. But what I want to say is, speaking in our country, maybe it's a special case, in our country, maybe 40% of the apartments in the beach, in the tourist destination, are owned by foreigners. These foreigners when they put apartments, because they bought a house, you know, for being 15 days and then to invite some friends, and then now there is a possibility to rent it to new people, in the platforms, where the places where they've been paying, is being paid to the owner. And the owner, the bank account to the owner is not in Spain. So these people who is coming, I can tell you, we have figures out of this. This money, when you pay to in a hotel, then the money stays in the country, at least distributed by many people. Then when the owner is a foreigner, and they say, my bank account is here, so a German client buying to a German owner through a German platform, and the money stays in Germany, then we receive these people and the money doesn't come to our country. I don't say this is in the whole cases, but this thing is happening. So we prefer, if there is a chance, that the money paid for holidays in our country, at least to stay, at least in the country, then they come back.
This is what you call in tourism economics a leakage. In other words, the revenue is being paid by tourists, but then it leaks out of the country.
Yes, but I'm not against this. You must understand that we are not against this.
Okay.
What we are thinking, this should be, what we really want to say, this is one type of tourism, and very important.
Now look, we're going to get on to, sorry, go ahead.
Can I just answer? So first of all, on the point of the housing issue, I actually have a slightly different opinion in that when it comes back to the definition of the sharing economy. To me, the concept of the sharing economy is that you buy something for primary use, and then you can add secondary and tertiary uses on top of that for very efficient use of assets. So when you don't use an asset, you share it with others. That's the entire concept of the sharing economy. So I think, to me, the best principle for the regulation in destinations where there is a housing issue, and I really believe that there is, for one reason or another, politicians not doing their job, or just too much demand for real estate.
In Geneva, there is definitely a housing shortage.
Yeah, Geneva, there is a huge issue. So I understand that there is a housing issue, and to me, the concept should simply be all the properties that can be rented long-term should be rented long-term, but all the properties that cannot be rented long-term, like your friend, for instance, should not be forbidden to be rented.
Since we're on this, sorry, did you want to say something?
I'd like to add to this, because I'm actually very passionate about the living space argument that is always around. And I mean, definitely, we do have a shortage of living space in cities, and also definitely rents are going up significantly in the last couple of years. But definitely, the private accommodation industry is not responsible for it. Like the trends like urbanization, and people simply want to live in the city these days, and this has changed entirely over the last 10 years or 15 years. So you just have much, much more demand for living space in cities than you had before. And secondly, and that's exactly what Ramón said, which was actually spot on, the politics simply haven't done enough to respond to this trend of urbanization. So simply not enough housing units have been built, which means you have too much demand and not enough supply, and of course rents go up. And if we talk about numbers, in Berlin it's 160,000 living units missing, and from what Ramón said, we could bring back 4,000 or 5,000. And I think, I mean, of course we have to start somewhere and solve the housing issue, but it's really just a drop in the ocean, a drop on a hot stone, as you'd say in Germany. And it's absolutely disproportional to discuss an entire ban of an industry just because you need a scapegoat for not having provided enough housing supply here in the cities.
Okay. So now, actually, I'd just like to ask a question to the three platforms here. What proportion of your apartments or owners, let's say, are controlling more than one unit? Because, again, I always talk about New York, where there are exaggerated things going on, where you have people that control 200 apartments, one person, and is making a good living out of renting these apartments on a platform.
Sorry, I think the better question is actually what proportion of
the revenue. I would answer there.
No, because very often we have agencies in our industry that manage a lot of units, right? So the host on HouseTrip or the other platforms is an agency, but they manage units on behalf of owners who live part-time in the property. So that's the way it works.
So I was going to ignore your question as well and answer, I don't know the numbers. So we have maybe like 30% of people who list more than one place. But, and this is like the important thing which Arnaud pointed out, we make 80% of our revenue from professional homeowners or agencies, or for example, like talking about Berlin again, sorry, but as we are here, there's the big building behind the main station called The Wave. There's a guy who bought one slice of The Wave with 150 apartments and is doing short-time rental. So of course he's a serious business partner for us, and we're doing a lot of business with him. But
that's going a bit beyond peer-to-peer.
As a user, he's just like not one. So 80% of the revenues is made from professionals who have all allowances, pay taxes. I don't know in which country Ramón differs. And these people have the same standards as you expect to have for professional hosts. And they have all the regulations and fire things and tax and blah, blah, blah.
Okay. Christopher, do you have a comment on this subject? Do you have significant proportionally apartments that are owned by one person? I mean, they're owned several, or?
We actually have a very similar inventory structure there. So I would say also 70% is coming from primary or secondary residences, and the rest is coming from more professional hosts. But for me, it doesn't make such a big difference, to be honest, because both depend on the income they make from renting out. And so both are equally important for us. Okay.
Now, I remind you again, in 5 minutes, I'm going to open up for questions. But there's one more important topic that we've already been moving around a bit and circling, and this is the regulatory aspect. So I'd like to start off with the platforms and just ask you, Ramón, Arnaud, and Christopher, do you think that apartment and house renters advertising on your website should be subjected to the same regulations and taxation as hotels and guest houses? So, Ramón, you can.
In a word, no.
Why?
Because they are not hotels.
Because they are not.
Because they are not hotels. I mean, you have to take into account the individual situation of each person. If you have this guy who is renting out 90 days a year his apartment because he's a student, he lives in a shared space, and he's for 3 months to learn something in Geneva. Why should he be regarded as someone who's running a professional business? The guy who has like 60 apartments all over Barcelona and is managing this with a team of 20 people and employing a lot of people as well, a cleaning woman, etc., property manager, of course he should apply to the same rules, but he already does, because he has all these tax numbers, allowances, registrations, etc. So I don't get that.
Okay, Arnaud, what do you say?
So
the question so do you think that apartment and house renters advertising on your website should be subjected to the same regulation and taxation as hotels and guest houses?
So I'm 100% pro-regulation on pro-taxation. Everyone should be regulated, abide by the law, and be taxed fairly. Of course, you know, it's a different type of business. It's as a hotel, it's the accommodation sector, so the regulation should not be exactly the same. And just maybe that's a bit stupid, but with hotels you have a lot of regulation on alcohol licenses and so on and so forth. Obviously, that will not apply to holiday rental, and it's a different type of host too. It's I mean, we're speaking about you know, private people renting for a few weeks a year. We should not have regulation that impose a de facto ban, because it's way too complicated for them to rent out their places during 3 weeks. So there should be some regulation, but adapted, fair, that allows for a good market situation and allows everyone to thrive with fair competition.
Okay, Christopher.
You know, our business basically lives from virality and word of mouth. So we need to do everything to make our customers very happy. because they will tell their friends and then they will travel with us. So I think every regulation that is in the interest of the consumer in the end is something that we'd support immediately. And at the moment there actually is regulation already to a certain degree. Like everyone has, of course, tax licenses, they have commercial licenses if they do it long term, they have a profit orientation. All houses that are rented out have been approved for living purposes. So why are they not good enough for tourists? So there actually is a certain base level of regulation already, and everything that is good for the customer, I think we'd also strongly support. However, you cannot compare a single apartment with a 60-bedroom hotel. So there must be made a difference between the two.
But I think we have actually a good benchmark in the internet industry for this. So if I sell or buy something on eBay, I usually don't pay any extra fees or taxes or whatever, and I don't need to have a license. If I'm a power seller, I will have to give warranties, send invoices, etc., etc. And this makes for me absolutely sense. If I make a living from it, only doing this, then I should be like fully responsible and have a certain regulation. If I do it like maybe once or twice, then it's more like a hobby thing. Yeah?
Okay. Now, I'm going to ask the hotelier.
Sorry, Ramón.
A slightly different question.
I don't agree, but they're speaking all the time platforms. And
the question that I want to ask the hoteliers, and perhaps Thomas could start off, how far is regulation of this type of activity, these peer-to-peer rental websites, gone in your jurisdictions, and what still needs to be done in your view? So this is your chance now to
you know, there is some regulation. Everybody who has an income has to pay income taxes. The question is if he declares it or not. Sub-rental for apartments, not for the owners, but if you rent an apartment, you make a sub-rental, it's prohibited in Switzerland. You are not allowed to make a commercial advantage of an apartment which you have rented. So there should be no room rental of my rented apartment on these platforms. Not allowed in Switzerland. And the question is, at the end, there are regulations. Nobody wants to be responsible for the regulations, especially not the platforms. It's like with the booking platforms. They say, we are not responsible for classification. We believe on what the hotelier declares. You believe what your clients declare, being in line with the regulations. The cities do not have the possibility. So who controls it at the end?
Just to recap, you feel that there's enough regulation in place officially, but it's a question of enforcement. Is that your view? It's a question of enforcing the rules that are already in place. Is that your view?
Yes, I think there are regulations. If all these regulations were sticked on, we would have a less big problem than we have. Or challenge, I would not say problem, a challenge. But the question is, are you those who say we control it to be sure that we have the right offers on your platform, or do you leave it to the others?
Good. Now, Raymond, I would like to hear from you on this question. What do you think still needs to be done in terms of actual formal regulation? I presume you have the same problem as Thomas is citing in Switzerland, a lack of enforcement of existing rules. But is there more regulation that should be put in place compared to what it is actually now?
Okay, first of all, don't get me wrong, because what we are asking from the hotel associations all over the world is to have less regulation for the hotel business. The problem is that we have hundreds of laws just to fulfill in everything. There is only 17 different directives now waiting just to be more, from handicapped people, environment, to put solar panels and to pay the labor cost, all the stuff that is more and more and more regulation. So the fact is, why the price of the hotel is more expensive than the other one is because there is a lot of laws to fulfill, a lot of them. So what we really don't want is just to ask for more regulation to them. This is not the question. The first that we will desire is to have less regulation to our business, but if this is impossible. So it's only a question to level the playing field. We are always trying to put a goal on the top of the mountain, and it's very difficult to climb with the ball all the time up there. So what we really need is to have some regulation. I think we are not only hoteliers who are asking for some regulation, you know. Neighbors are asking for some regulation, but some of them, they don't really want to have, you know, your neighbor changing every 2 days the owner and the key. There's also the consumers, and I'm happy to see that you are pro-consumer. But we have a lot of regulation from the consumer side we spend hundreds of millions of euros just to fulfill all the consumer regulation. And now private apartments don't have to do it. At the end, this is a business. This is a business. For some of them, it's only a weak business, maybe. Some of them are professionals, but we are not going to see the difference between one to the other. They are providing accommodation, and platforms are travel agencies. So at the end, they must fulfill, for example, when we charge VAT, we don't want to charge VAT. We charge city taxes. We don't want to charge city taxes. We pay income taxes. We don't want to pay income taxes. We don't pay social security. But we should pay everything that we understand and we provide it. No? So what we really ask, if this is an economic activity, and we think it's not a sharing economy, this is surf cultures. This is a big business. We see the figures, and I'm really happy. They are very clever, and they did it very well. And I'm also thinking there's a lot of hoteliers who are going to put their rooms in these kind of platforms. So, but because this is a new channel of selling, but this is a business. So we need to have some regulation because they are providing accommodation, and the accommodation, maybe we don't like, but it's the way it is completely full of laws and legislation all over the world.
Okay. Now, I'd like to open up the questions. Does somebody have a question? Yes. We have a mic here. Keep your hand up, please, miss.
I have a question to you three. To what extent do you inform your clients or hosts about their obligations in terms of taxes, regulations, and so on and so forth?
So if you want me to take that, it's actually, so again, I'm actually with you. I think that hosts should have regulation, but the one problem in our industry is that the regulation is very, very complicated and very, very local, and especially these days, changes very rapidly. So if we take the UK, for instance, it's not only at a region level or not even at a city level. Regulation applies at a borough level. So it's quite crazy. So we don't have the financial means to follow regulation in every single borough of every single municipality around the world. What we tell the host is, and we're quite adamant about that, check the regulation that applies to you and make sure you're legal and pay your taxes.
What about?
Same disclaimer with us. We certainly inform everybody when listing his place that he has to follow the local rules and everything.
So they are informed.
And we are, on top of that, collecting the tax numbers from the hosts, step by step. Not from everybody, it's just like a process which is started. Because we see that at some point, some tax authority may come to us and, do like a spot check.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can hardly add to it. So we do exactly the same, but the laws are different completely everywhere. So it's impossible to give precise advice for everyone and be up to date everywhere. And we also, like Ramón, collect commercial IDs.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I have
just say who you are, please. Where you come
Christina. I'm from Berlin.
Okay, good.
My question is if there's a concern that holiday apartments might be completely banned or forbidden in major European cities, seeing that Berlin is already starting to move things because they're saying it's causing the housing problem. Also, I see that the hotel lobby is very strong because they're an organized body, and whereas the holiday apartment industry is very fragmented because it's like single owners and they don't have like a lobby. And at least in Berlin, I mean, it seems to be a very strong influence to say the hotel lobby is saying it's causing the housing problem. So what's your opinion on that?
Just before you answer, I just want to point out, this is a question that I could have asked earlier, but actually the three sites present, you formed a lobby group, I believe it was last November, is that correct?
Yeah.
to a network to lobby for your rights. The network claims that as a private rentals become more significant, it's important that these companies unite and communicate with one voice. So there is a sort of group that has been formed amongst you three, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so
Chris, would you like to update as you live in Berlin?
Yeah, I can start. So, I mean, our industry is pretty young still, so we're only 2 or 3 years old, and of course we didn't have the time to organize ourselves as much as the hotellery does. So of course we have less weight in the discussion at the moment, and like work on this to improve it. The problem is that the arguments are relatively weak. So we have this housing thing that we have already talked about, and 1 or 2 others, but in the end it's a complete disproportion between what is being discussed and what is actually happening on the ground. So we see that a ban is being discussed somewhere, and it's always happening without actually involving the stakeholders. So actually Berlin, for example, has never approached us and engaged a dialogue and said, look, we need to talk about this issue. Other cities have done so, and sort of then it's okay, you come to an agreement. So our problem is regulation is always an issue if not all stakeholders are involved, and this is what we see at the moment, and that's of concern. And I think if we were involved, as you can see, we're not completely against regulation, we just need to have it in a certain frame, and I think then it's nothing to worry about in the long term.
Maybe one of the hoteliers would like to comment, since that's one of the prime functions of a hotel association is to lobby, correct?
It's funny because when I see the hotels associations, you know, they are fragmented by many, many different hoteliers have been working for a long time. The fact is that these new companies, there are not too many companies, very strong, they are making a lot of money, and they know the business can continue in the future if they invest money in lobbying, no? So the fact that we are really working in lobbying, trying to lobby in many different things, yes, and the membership, the work from our members, they don't really want to spend a lot of money, but for the business, they are now investing. There is Airbnb and the rest of the companies. They are investing in very good attorneys, good studies, and now they are trying to put some money on it just to continue with the product. So what I think, if once they accept that they are really a part of the business, of the tourist business, and they are providing one type of accommodation, I'm pretty sure that we are going to join forces. All of us.
Okay, Thomas, maybe you have a comment
one to the other
before you leave.
Yeah, the question about lobbying is, should the platform make the lobbying for those apartments would be the same as if the online booking platforms would have to make the lobby for us. So this is a business model. You want to earn money and you take in whoever wants to come in. So the fragmented offer of these apartment owners or rentals, they should organize themselves. But as soon as they organize themselves, they come out of the black economy, then we know who they are. So this, I think this is the main problem. When we discussed this, when he had a news article after this study from Column Partner about the evolution of Airbnb in Zurich, there was within 3 months a reduction of number of offers on this platform, because they realized that the rental of a room or a bed is illegal in Switzerland. And this is the problem.
Okay, now I think there's a question back here, Miss. Go ahead. So, who are you? Where are you from? And go ahead.
I'm Claudia Dunkman. I'm coordinating the first interest group of apartment owners in Berlin. So I have to disappoint you. I have to disappoint you,
Fantastic.
Thomas. They
Fantastic.
are organized.
Okay.
And, yeah, I'm actually surprised that no apartment owner is sitting up there. It would be interesting to include the apartment owners in the group, because we are speaking the whole time about them, but we don't hear their voice. And what I can say is that so far our experience was that the hoteliers didn't got together with us, neither the politicians. So my question actually is at the same time also a critic. It's like, okay, you are blaming us for doing something wrong. What would be your offer for a regulation? Because your offers you have done so far would destroy our sector at all. Like, apartment owners wouldn't get over those regulations. In Berlin at the moment, it's going on. There is a ban. They want to forbid all the apartment owners any rent. So what would your offer for a regulation?
So commit yourself to following the regulation, to keep the regulation, to pay a city tax, to pay a marketing fee.
Our members all pay city tax. So they all pay city tax.
Organize those apartment rentals who are acting correctly, and speak together with the German Hotel Association.
But they
Great. I'm not from Germany, I'm from Switzerland.
No, we are speaking with the owners in our country already, and we are just working in a working group to understand what kind of regulation. So we are not far. We are getting closer every day. Yeah? No,
I think one thing I want to add very briefly, because we discussed...
excuse me. So Thomas and
we have to leave.
You have to leave.
Go on.
Okay. So please join me in giving a hand, well, to all the panelists, I think. And thank you for your participation.
You want to stay?
And thank you for the questions. Can we ask a few more? Okay. So the hoteliers have to leave, unfortunately, because they have to get a flight in Tegel.
Keep care to the hoteliers.
Anyway,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Here, I guess, a little bit longer with another question. So, yes, the person in the back.
I just wanted to briefly comment.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
Because we said that sort of, okay, we have the host side, so the people that rent out, and also the platforms that are organizing. I think it's very important that, of course, both take action. And I think what we can add in, because we heard here that it's sort of strange why the platforms actually engage in the discussion. But I think it's very important that we share knowledge across the cities. So like when we engage, for example, in discussions in London or in Amsterdam, we learn things that would also apply to cities such as Berlin. And I think that's why it's something that has to happen together, where platforms and hosts work together in order to make sure that the regulation in the end comes out fine.
Very good. Go ahead, please.
Hi, my name is Celinda Geyer. I'm a hotelier from Switzerland. So it's too bad the hoteliers.
Where in Switzerland?
In Basel.
Okay.
So my question would be to the panelists. Unfortunately, hoteliers went away, so I'm not so concerned about the regulations because it's a growing market, it's a fact. My problem would be, what did we hoteliers do wrong? Where did it go wrong? Why did those customers go away? How can we win those customers back? I'm more maybe talking to Mr. Oster, who is talking about local experience, which seems to be an issue. I'm not so worried about the price-driven customer, because that one has always been an issue for us, but that's not new. But the local experience is really interesting for me. What can you say about that, and what would be your recommendation for hoteliers?
I'm actually very happy for this reflective comment also, that maybe innovation has been lacking in the hotel industry for some time. And I think families, for example, are a target group that haven't been, like, where's no good solution in hotels. I remember back when I used to travel with my parents, we always had 2 or 3 hotel bedrooms next to each other with like an open door in between, and it simply wasn't a perfect convenient stay for us. So that's why we also never did city trips together, for example. And I think that's something where currently apartments offer simply more convenience, and the target group, for example, where innovation has been lacking in hotellery.
I think, to me, out of the 3 big drivers, which are value, authenticity, and freedom. Freedom is the biggest one, and all the practicalities that an apartment or a house offer versus a hotel. To be fair, I think that there are a few hotels that are moving more and more into that direction. I can think, for instance, of Citizen M, which gives a bit more freedom to its guests. They're free to go down to the lobby and themselves for food when they want, come back to their room, and so on and so forth. It's people just want to holiday and travel on their own terms, right? And they don't want to be forced into behaviors that they don't feel is natural to them. So that would be, I think, the biggest thing. Yeah. What do you mean, service-driven? Yeah, sure. So I'm not saying the people don't want to be served. I'm saying they want to behave the way they always do. They want to bring their routine with them when they travel. Like the example I gave earlier, I want to have my coffee in my pyjama in the morning, right? I don't want to have to go down all dressed to a breakfast room and meet other people. That's so they want freedom.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. Yeah, but you didn't see her, actually. She was already before, I think. Yeah.
So 2 last questions.
She's the last one. Okay.
And if possible, not hotel industry related, because these guys have left.
My question is about, I'm Angelika Schmidhofer. I'm a host, and I'm a member of Apartment Alliance, and I'm managing as well holiday rentals for owners. So when I saw you all together here, I all the time was thinking, why don't you work together? Because in the end, in the end, in the end, the guest needs, in the end,
clear rules.
Not about regulation, but it's for the advantage to the guest if you would work together, because hotels are in the cities with locations or places in the cities. And this is what I realized in the past when I worked with all my guests, that they are very well supported when they do the booking thing, and when they come to me and I check them in, and then they are somehow without anything. And a hotel is at the place. There's a reception, there's a concierge, can be a lot of service. And this is what I was all the time thinking when I saw you here. There's a chance to work together.
Perhaps we just let them answer here. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, we can discuss a merger. I'm happy. But I'm not sure I understood completely the point. Is working together on literally merging those 3 companies and.
So to make it short, we are working together wherever and whenever it makes sense. For example, like having, I mean, in Berlin we have, what do we have, like 60 appointments with local authorities? Okay, we are then dividing this, and doing this. Not everybody's doing these 60 apartments, otherwise we go crazy. 60 appointments. So we are working together whenever we see that it's like beneficial for all of us. But of course, if it comes to service, like leave a SIM card with a 9 Flats logo in the room or something for foreign tourists, this is something where we will not work together, because there we are like competitors.
Yep. Okay. Anything?
Yeah, can hardly add to it. I mean, clearly we're working now more than in the last couple of months on the topic together, and have formed our groups, and we speak regularly about the topic. So I think this has changed a lot in the last weeks, months, I would say.
Yeah, I do remind you that they have made this association that I referred to earlier.
We're working with you guys too, right? We're a sponsor of Apartment Alliance.
I think we could get on to the last question here with Ms. Stump.
Yeah, I'm Melanie Stump from École de Lausanne. And my question actually goes a bit in the same direction. And I would wonder what your opinion is on how long it will take until international hotel chains will actually enter this peer-to-peer market by either coming up with their own version of peer-to-peer, that will be, for example, branded, or by buying their way into the market.
Ramón, you have this one.
So, thank you for this question. All around the world, I see really great, exciting new hotel concepts which are completely different from what we have seen in the past. I mean, our main objection to why we claim to be an alternative to a hotel is really like you have to have a 3-piece suite guy at the reception to be accepted as a 4-star hotel. I don't need someone in a 3-piece suit standing there at the reception. It's not necessary for me. So the star rating system is like becoming less and less less important, and the experience, like in these 25-hour hotels, or I mean, there are so many hotels all around the world which are really like great and offer completely cubic in London, exciting hotels which are completely different from what you know, and this is great. So the hotel industry evolves into something which is more modern, yeah? And of course the standard hotel, which was last furnished 20 years ago at the trade fair, will always have its clientele. This is completely okay, but it's not what the modern consumer really wants today. So I think the hotel industry is much smarter than you might think, and they're evolving heavily into this. And I personally, as a traveler, I love it. Because I get more service.
That's the other two comment briefly.
I mean, the tourism market is huge. It's really very, very big. And there's a space for everyone. And everyone who has an innovative concept, I think, can have a share of this market and have like approach a very distinct customer group with this concept, basically. So I think we'd all be in favor of seeing like more innovation from all sides from the market, because in the end, it can only grow the pie for everyone.
Yeah. I think, like I said earlier, the popularity of our platforms reveals it's a great indicator that consumer wants certain things. So it's famous value, freedom, and authenticity. So if hotel groups develop products that answers to those needs, that's I can totally see that happening, and then distributing those products on our platforms.
Yeah, because I think that's one possibility that hoteliers, and I guess it already happens in some cases, that there are hotels that are putting their rooms on your platforms, because I think it would be cheaper in some cases than OTAs, right? Okay, this has come to an end. Thank you very much for your participation. Let's thank the panelists and all of those who asked questions.
Thank you.